Hi guys, it's Amy GablesStitcher here with a stitching update video. Today is September 18th, 2020, and it's only been about 2 weeks since I've seen you last. Last video was a really long video. This video will not be that long. I don't have a ton to show, but I did want to pop on because I have 2 fully finished objects, and one of them is being mailed out for a gift probably tomorrow. So I wanted to show it before I mailed it off to its recipient. I do have a pile of WIPS to show you as well. I have stitched quite a bit over the last 2 weeks, and I have no haul. Nope, none, which is kind of crazy. None to show. So it'll be a shorter video, but still chock full of goodness, hopefully. So the kids started school this week. In Massachusetts, we typically start right after Labor Day. This year, the governor pushed back the date of school starting about 10 days to allow for schools to really plan for what they were going to do in this pandemic year. Our district is starting full remote. The hope is to go to hybrid in about a month. But right now, the kids are doing school from at home. This is day 3. Day 1 was a little rough. Day 2 was still rough. Day 3 so far is going okay, which is why I'm here. 7th grade science is happening in the kitchen. I figured I'd pop on for a minute while I had the chance. So right now, this is normal. It's going okay, and I think the kids are happy to be back at school to see friends, even though it is just through the computer screen right now. I went to Maine for about a week, right? I left on Labor Day, and I came back the following Saturday. I went and visited with a good stitchy friend of mine, Becky. We had a really nice time. Maine is gorgeous. If you have never been, I highly recommend you go. It is beautiful in all seasons. Late summer, early fall, really nice. The air is crisp. There was lots of wildlife we saw, beautiful scenery. I love Maine. It's such a relaxing place to go, and I always feel refreshed when I come back. I did do quite a bit of stitching there, and I also finished an item, and that's the first thing I'm going to show you. So I finished a biscornu while I was in Maine. This might look familiar because I had stitched it in February. This was going to be my small exchange for the Frugal Yankee retreat in March. Well, the Frugal Yankee retreat did not happen. So it sat unfinished until this past week. This is a pattern from the Snowflower Diaries, excuse me. And this pattern was in an old issue of Punch Needle and Primitive Stitcher magazine. I believe it was winter 2018. And it was meant to be completed as a pillow. And my friend Becky said, you should make a biscornu out of it. And I said, I've never made a biscornu. So she showed me how. What I did, and this was also recommended by her, was to sew the chain stitch around each square. Instead of a back stitch edge, I did a chain stitch edge. And then I joined the chain stitch with a whip stitch. I'm trying to cover my face, so hopefully it'll focus a little bit on the biscornu. I think you can kind of see it. It makes a nice finished edge. So I filled it with fiberfill. This was stitched with 3865 is the white. The green is a Victorian motto for my stash. 28 count cashel linen. That was just a scrap I had. And I connected it with 2 buttons that I had. So I'm really happy with how that came out. My husband said, what do you do with a biscornu? I said, nothing. It's just pretty and it makes me happy. So there is a scissor fob pattern that goes with this. I have some of the material left, so I plan on making that too at some point. So that is FFO number 1. I did finish that while I was in Maine. That one is for me. FFO number 2 is the gift. And this you've seen stitched but not finished. This is a Prairie Schooler ornament. I stitched this summer while I was on vacation. And I believe this was from book 45. It's an old book. I do not believe it's been reprinted. And I just made this into a flat ornament. I made some cording for the edge. I have a piece of fabric I picked up. I think it's quilting fabric that I thought worked nicely. And I put a little bow on the top. It is not perfect. I think I've said many times I am not a finisher at all. It's a little crooked, it's a little wonky, but I think it looks nice. I'd be happy to get it as a gift. So I hope the person who receives it enjoys it as well. It brings them happiness. I saved the template I made from the cardboard template because this book had, I think, 8 ornaments in it. And I figure I could use it to make the other ornaments as well. Someone commented in my last video, I can't remember if I responded to them or not. They asked if I was using a lighter green than what was called for on this chart. And I believe I did. I think I didn't have the green that it called for, so I just pulled something out from my stash in DMC. So this is all DMC, and this is on a 28 count linen that has a little bit of opalescence in it, but you can't really see it on the video. So that's FFO number 2. So for someone who never finishes stuff fully, I think I did okay this time. Yeah, 2 fully finished objects. Not bad. Like I said, that one will be mailed out for a gift, and I do hope to stitch and finish more of the ornaments from that book. And like I said, I think it was Prairie Schooler 45. They've been reprinting a lot of those Prairie Schoolers, and I almost wonder if they take requests. Like if there's a book that you really like, will they take requests to print it next? I don't know. This is just speculation, but I've really enjoyed the different Prairie Schoolers that have been coming out as re-releases. Okay, let's move on to WIPS. So I had mentioned that in September, I wanted to catch up on some of my stitch-alongs I had neglected. This is the Linens and Threads 2019 stitch-along. So it was severely neglected. I don't think I have stitched on it at all in 2020. This is not the complete stitch-along, obviously, because there's a lot of blank areas. It does go fully out to the frame when completed. However, I decided when looking at the pattern, I think I'm just going to complete what is in this inside square. So I am stitching this on a 28 count Monaco. I believe it's either antique white or ivory. And what I've stitched since you've last seen this is this block here. Those 2 swans. I am stitching this over 1, and I am stitching it primarily with DMC 3808. So I really like how that is coming out. I started this block here, and then I decided that I needed a break from over 1 stitching, so I put it away. But I would like to keep this out. This is a project I would like to finish this year in 2020, or at least come close. I think it might be a stretch to finish it because I'm doing 10 parts of the 12-month stitch along. I have fully completed 2 out of the 10 parts, so 20%. I'm not sure I'll be able to complete 80% in 4 months. We'll see. But I would like to finish that in the not so distant future. WIP number 2. Just again, no particular order. This one I didn't stitch on very much, but I wanted to show you. This is the Nantucket Houses by Hemlock and Rye. Nantucket Christmas Houses. And these are by Julie, Kansas City Girl in the Colorado World. She released them separately, but then she also released a border so you can stitch them all together. So that's what I am doing. I am stitching them on 40 count Country Mocha with the called for DMC and Weeks Dye Works. I haven't done a ton since you've seen it last. I worked a little bit up here on what this will be the first house, and the center house I started filling in. So my plan is to do basically all the skeleton work and then do the fill-in while I am supervising schooling, because I will have a lot of that this month. So I really like how that's coming out. 1 thread over 2, and it's a really enjoyable stitch. These are free downloads, and I'll put the link in my description box. All right, 2 more WIPs. WIP number 3. I am stitching another stitch along. So September is stitch along month. This is one that is not behind. There is a Facebook group called the Stitching Book Club, and it is hosted by Sapphire Mountain Crafts. She has a Etsy shop, and I think she's done about 4, this might be her 4th book club. And this is the first one I'm jumping on. I actually think, so the first one was Pride and Prejudice, then I believe it was Three Musketeers and The Secret Garden, and this one's Frankenstein. Let me find some pulled up behind it because you can't see through this fabric. Let's try this. So I am, believe it or not, I am completely caught up. So part 1 was the border. Part 2 were these 2 blocks here. And we're reading the first, I believe, 8 chapters of the book, and that I am not caught up on. I haven't started the book yet, so I really need to start it. Part discussion starts next week, so I need to read that this weekend. And part 3 comes out, I believe, next Saturday for the stitch along. So this I am stitching on a scrap of fabric I have. It's a 40 count, no idea the color. And I am stitching it with a Victorian Motto floss called Old Bronze. And I think that is perfect with this fabric and for Frankenstein. So really, really enjoying this. Really enjoying it. So it is the Stitching Book Club. You can still join in, and there was a group on Facebook with all the information, and the pattern is in Sapphire Mountain Crafts on Etsy, and she emails you the patterns. Really fun. Last project I worked on was a stitch along from this year. It is from iStitch Designs. It is the Burgundy Band Sampler. And the way this worked is it's stitched on banding, and once a week for 28 weeks, you get a small section to stitch. And I kept up really well until March, until the pandemic hit. I would stitch this every Saturday morning in my stitching group, and once my stitching group stopped meeting because of COVID, I stopped stitching on it. Well, it's over. I'm almost at the halfway point, so I think I've shown this before. It's really big. It's about 100 centimeters long, this piece of banding, and I am almost at the halfway point. So this, since you've seen it last, I've stitched from this row of hearts down. So I think it's really pretty. This is over 1 and 28 count. And this is why I had said I was really done with over 1, because that's a lot of over 1. I'm stitching this on, so it's 28 count natural banding, and I'm stitching with 915, I believe, DMC 915. I really am liking the way this is turning out. So I am almost at the halfway point. So I will be pulling this out again soon. This is, once again, this is something else I would like to finish this year. I have a lot of plans, don't I, for this year. I figured it out. I needed to stitch, I think, 2 weeks a week from here on out to finish it. So it's doable. Most likely it will be finished the beginning of 2021. January 2021, the Jade sampler starts, band sampler. I would like to do that, but I'm not going to let myself do it unless I'm pretty much done with the Burgundy band sampler. So we'll see how it goes. Something that always happens to me this time of year is I look over my WIPS and get panicked about the number of WIPS I have and start thinking about what I want to finish before the end of the year and how many I want to carry into the next year. So this year will be, how many do I want to carry into 2021? The answer is I always end up carrying forward way more than I want to. This year I started a lot more than I finished. I believe I'm up to 37 WIPs, which makes me a little panicked, to be honest. It's just a number. It shouldn't make me panicked because this is cross stitch, and cross stitch is a hobby and it should be fun. And it is fun. And I have to say that I pulled out 2 things I haven't stitched on in a long time. The 2019 linen thread sampler and that banding. And I really, really enjoyed both of them. And I don't think so much it's that I feel panicked. It's that I really enjoy stitching on all my WIPs. And it makes me sad that I can't stitch on all of them more often, which is why I think I want to have less WIPs. So I'm starting to come up with a list of what I want to finish by the end of 2020. I think I'll share it in my next video. I did this last year too. I found on my phone a Tiny Decisions wheel I made for 2019. And I finished half of the WIPs that I picked out that I thought I could finish in 2019. I finished those by the end of December. And most of them I finished, and most of the other ones I finished at the beginning of 2020. So that felt good. So I think I will do the same thing this year. Ideally, my ideal number of WIPs is probably down around 10. I am far from that. But I do think that I will have less starts next year and more finishes because I do have some old WIPs that are getting old enough to vote. And I would like to see them finished and up on my wall. So just a preview of things I've been thinking about and something that you'll probably see. I think I might do a full-fledged WIP parade before the end of this year. I like to take pictures of my WIPs at the end of the year anyway, so I know where they are, and I store them on an album on my phone. That way, when I'm trying to decide what to stitch next, I can look at those pictures. I haven't done a WIP parade, I think, since like my 3rd video. So it's probably time. So I might do a WIP parade. I probably will do a WIP parade at some point in December so I can take my pictures and update you on where I am, because probably about 8 WIPs for my WIP parade. Original one, I've UFO'd. They're no longer WIPs. I'm either going to restart them or I'm just done with them. So, preview of what to come. One other thing. So, like I said, only was here 2 weeks ago. Not a ton to show you. Really no haul to speak of. I wanted to talk about a book that I read this summer. My last video, I asked if anybody wanted to hear about books, and most people said yes. So, as you can see, I love books. And reading is my primary hobby along with cross stitch. I decided that I'm not going to talk about every book I read. I'm going to try to talk about 1, maybe 2 books at the end of each video. So if you were just here for the stitching and really don't want to hear about books, that's fine. Thank you for coming to visit, and hopefully I'll be back in another couple of weeks. Ideally, I like to make more frequent videos and have them be between 20 and 30 minutes because that's what works well for me. And when I sit and watch a video, I like 30-minute videos are great for me too. But we know life happens, so we'll see what happens. But if you're here to hear about a book, thanks for sticking around. What do I read? I don't think I've ever really talked about that in my videos. I have an eclectic taste in books, just like I do in stitching. I enjoy reading historical fiction. I enjoy reading mysteries. I enjoy reading all types of mysteries. I like reading cozy mysteries. I like reading what they call hard-boiled mysteries. I enjoy reading Scandinavian mysteries, which tend to be pretty gory. I need to be in the mood for them, but I do enjoy Icelandic authors and Swedish authors. I've learned as long as a book has a good translation, it is really nice to read a book from an author that in a language that is not my own. Not my own being, I like reading American authors. I like reading non-American authors. I like reading authors whose primary language is English and some who their primary language is not English. I like to read classics, although I do have to say that most of the time that's something that I need to decide to read and to kind of force myself to read. So sometimes I read more than I do other times. Right now I'm going to be reading Frankenstein for that book club. I love reading memoirs. I love reading food books, whether it be a cookbook or books about culinary history. About the only type of book that I do not gravitate towards is young adult fiction and fantasy. Not really science fiction either, but those are probably the books that I don't read much at all. My husband really enjoys science fiction, so he's trying to ease me into that genre. And I am reading a science fiction book now, and I'm actually enjoying it. So you never know. You can't teach old dog new tricks. The book I'm going to talk about today is a book I read this summer. And I wrote down the title so I wouldn't say it wrong. It is called Hidden Valley Road, Inside the Mind of an American Family. And it's by Robert Kolker, Kolker. And I am going to try to insert a picture of the cover so you will see what it looks like. A lot of times I read books on my Kindle. Even if I own the book, sometimes I read them on my Kindle if I can take it out from the library Overdrive app. Just because I can read the Kindle in bed without the light on and without my glasses on. So I find it very convenient. So this book, Hidden Valley Road, it was about a family of 12 children. The family's name was the Galvin family. And this book I found was very interesting and it was very heartbreaking at the same time. This family had 12 children in it, 12 children. The mother and father were Mimi and Don, and they had 12 children between 1945 to 1965. And interestingly enough, this spans the entire baby boomer generation. They were an Air Force family, and their first 10 children were boys, and the last 2 children were girls. What was really interesting about this family, and also heartbreaking, and why there is a book about them, is 6 of their 12 children had schizophrenia. 6 of the boys. And that is just, I mean, having one child with schizophrenia is, it's heartbreaking to think of. Having 6, just, wow. So schizophrenia is a disease that, you know, really still not much is known about today in the year 2020. It's one of those diseases that's difficult to treat. Psychiatric disease that's often resistant to medication and is most likely a category diseases that's lumped together because no schizophrenia looks the same as another. Now, one of the unique things about this family, the Galvin family, besides the fact that unfortunately 6 of their children had severe mental illness, is they were one of the first families that was really studied in depth by the National Institute of Mental Health. Because even today, is it nurture versus nature? How much of disease is genetic versus environmental, or is it a combination of the two? And by having 6 people within the same family with the same disease, it provides a large base of study to be able to look at the genetic component of the disease versus the environmental components of the disease. So this book talked also about the history of mental health and research into psychiatric illnesses, as well as medications. And those chapters paralleled the history of the Galvin family. And this book, a lot of times the books I read, I find difficult to read. This is one of those books. It was heartbreaking to read about this family, but at the same time, it was very interesting to find out how much how much this family has helped the discovery and progression of mental health research and treatment here now in 2020, and will continue because we keep learning more and more as time goes on. So I really enjoyed this book. And I say enjoy as a way that, like I said, it wasn't a happy book, but I'm really happy I read it because I found it very interesting. And it made me very curious about other mental illnesses and other research that has gone on in the past few decades towards hopefully a cure. So I probably shouldn't have chosen such a depressing book for my first book to talk about, but it's probably, when I looked back at the last 6 books or so that I read, this was the one that stood out as making an impact on my thought process. So once again, it was called Hidden Valley Road: Inside the Mind of an American Family. And if you enjoy reading memoirs and books about, history of illness, I would highly recommend it. Next time when I talk about a book, I will talk about a fiction book that is more uplifting than this book. But like I said, this book really touched me, and I really am happy that I read it, as difficult as it was. So I think I've babbled long enough. Thank you very much for watching, continuing to come back and to see what I'm stitching and to share my journey with me. I hope you are all doing well. I hope you are enjoying the season and your stitching, and I look forward to talking to all of you soon. Thank you very much. Bye.